You're listening to the best local sports show. Boots, Bats and Balls on Six Towns Radio.
Altered Images there, and that's one of our next guest's favourite songs, I think. He tells me a story about Claire Grogan back in the 80s, but I'll let you ask him about that. Introducing Martin Smith. Martin, welcome to the show.
Good morning, Rob.
Great to have you on. First time, really, to talk about all things Stoke City. I mean, we've had you on to talk about your son, Jack, who's a very good potential swimmer, but we're not talking about him today. We'll talk about all things Stoke City. And you've done a couple of recent decent articles. An angel on one shoulder, the devil on the other, and a piece in the Sentinel where you're not calling for Pulis' head, despite some Stoke fans asking for his blood at this stage. Just talk us through those, if you don't mind, Martin.
Yeah, well, there's no question. There's a chasm that's opened in supporter opinion at Stoke. You know, there are a lot of supporters who are getting quite irritated with the manager, and you know, I understand it. I genuinely do. I think last time I was on here we did talk about Stoke a little bit, and I had some sort of nagging doubts then, and I think that the general consensus, you know, with these doubters is, you know, why aren't we kind of moving on more than perhaps we should have done? Have we built on? Are we any further ahead than we were when we reached the cup final? We spent a lot of money since then, so you know, the football hasn't been great. It's become a little bit of a grind recently, so. Yeah, I've had, you know, people coming up to me and say, you know, he's got to go, he's got to get rid of the manager, you know, why aren't you saying something? And these articles were really to sort of try and put across how conflicted I am, because I do agree with a lot of things that people are saying. I genuinely do. I do worry that, you know, some of the transfer money, which, you know, should have been maybe a golden kitty to really propel the club forward, maybe hasn't done that. And yet, on the other hand, you know, crisis, what crisis? You know, we're kind of doing okay. It's not great, you know, but it's only, 5 weeks since Boxing Day, and we were coming off a, you know, I think the game after that as well, Southampton, that made it 10 games unbeaten, very comfortable in the Premier League, and, you know, are we really kind of overreacting? Are we becoming so, we're almost... what's the word? I mean, we're overreacting almost to every result. Every win's fantastic, and we're on cloud nine, and every defeat, you know, it's dreadful.
But that's football fans, isn't it? Really,
of course it is, but I think it's become a little bit more exaggerated recently. I think what it is as well. And again, I think I mentioned certainly in the Oatcake article we did that I think people are in danger of painting themselves into a corner. So those that defend the manager will defend him no matter what, you know.
Yeah,
he could walk round your table at lunch, stick both fingers in his drink and slurp off him, and you'd thank him. But then there's other people, you know, there's other people he can, you know, go do what he's done, go to the top of Kilimanjaro for charity, and you still want him out, you know, or he can do what he's done for the club. And now people say, oh, you know, how much longer are we going to live on the cup final? Well, we've been a club for 150 years, 140 years in the FA Cup now, and we've reached a grand total of one final. You know, it's not gone, and it's not gone yet. It's not taken off the table yet, in my mind. You know, it's still a relevant achievement, and you know, when we have to look at these things, you know, and so I kind of the point of the articles was I'm just really, really conflicted, but I can't believe at this moment. You're like me, Rob, you know, you were there at the very founding of the Oatcake as well. Probably a lot of people don't know that, you know, one of the driving forces behind it, perhaps more than me, that you probably saw a longer vision of it than I did. Mm-hmm. And I came to it late in that respect, although I was there from issue one doing most of the work. I think you had the longer plans for it. No, I think
I had the vision, you did the work. That's how it normally gives, mate.
Rob's a very good delegator. No, you know, so, you know, we were there, and there's been times of real strife and turmoil down Stoke, and you know, we've called for managers to be sacked, and that's a massive thing. We've campaigned against boards, and I've organised meetings at the Jubilee Hall, the King's Hall. I've paid for them out of my own pocket. We've had meetings in pubs at the Victoria, the Eagle and Child is it in Chesterton. But you know, I was involved in SISA, the Stoke City Independent Supporters Association, and all those things at the time. I stick by every last one of them, but this time this isn't that. And I can't understand why some people are trying to make out that it is. We're not playing very well, but it is not what those things were. This is not a crisis.
No,
Certainly,
far from it.
and we were actually a very stable and well-run club. So whilst I take on board everything everybody's saying, football away from home is rubbish. I'll come out and say that. And I don't think it's working. 1 win in 21 away games, and it's at West Brom. You almost can't count that for us. I think I'm genuinely sure we could bring Nello out of retirement and put him up front, and we would still win at West Brom. But and I said like after last week, that's 20 visits now to the Emirates, Old Trafford, Etihad, and Stamford Bridge. 20 defeats, 55 goals conceded. Now they are hard grounds to go to, but you won't find a club whose record is that bad. Somebody's got something out of 20 visits, and in fact I know they have because I've looked it up. So there's just little things like that. But let's not chuck the baby out with the bathwater. Let's say what's wrong. Let's maybe even make our voices known and let the manager know maybe it's time to try something else. But you can't go that next step yet. I just don't believe we're there.
The FA Cup final. I look at that and think fantastic achievement, and the 5-0 and the semi-final, probably one of the best Stoke games I've ever seen, and so proud to be there.
Yeah.
But it's a fairly easy thing to get to. To be honest, it's 4 or 5 weeks to get to Wembley.
We've never done it before or since, have we?
But there's a certain element of a luck of the draw.
Yeah, of course.
Who you pull out in that bag, and we did beat a couple of tough teams on the way.
Sure.
So it's not as intense as something like the Premier League.
No,
so again, it's just a that was a great achievement, but it was probably a lesser challenge than finishing in the top half of the Premiership.
Yeah.
Can I just say, I think Pulis, again, from not being a Stoke fan, but he's always had that ability, and he's done it particularly in the Premiership era, that once the game's done, he doesn't sort of dwell on that, does he? He's always sort of looked forward at the next one and said, I can't. And I still think that's a strength. But I take the point what Martin's saying is, somewhere along the line, you've got to learn from those 20 visits to the top 4, and something's got to change. So
try something new,
exactly.
That balance that you were saying is him and his way, opposed to the desire for progression.
Well,
and it's
there's an interesting
balance.
thing. I think putting on again an angel on one shoulder, a devil on the other. That he has himself said. He talks about this 3-year plan, and we've got to survive.
Yeah.
Well, nothing seems to have happened since that 3-year plan. I think that's the devil talking there. That and he talked about he's learning too. Well, I think some people would argue you're not, because we seem to be doing the exact same thing we were doing in the first season. And if that's working, that's fine. No one cares. If it's working, that's fine. But I suppose then the broader argument becomes, well, what's the definition of working? Is staying in the Premier League? Is that working? I think there's another thing. I remember the first year we were up, we played Middlesbrough, and they were relegated that season. And they'd started the season brilliantly. I think they got a Brazilian up front whose name now eludes me. He scored past Stoke. Stunning.
Tunchai and Eva playing, weren't they?
Tunchai played brilliantly at Stoke. I think that's what persuaded us to sign him, even though we beat them. But I remember talking to a Middlesbrough fan online about that. I mean, he was on about the passion at the Britannia Stadium, and that really was when the bear pit thing was at its absolute ultimate. We were really beginning to feel that day that we're going to survive, against all expectations. And he said, give it 3 or 4 years, you'll be bored and fed up of it, and you'll be saying this isn't good enough. And maybe that has come to pass. The expectation is naturally going to increase from fans. It absolutely is. That when you see players being signed for 8 million, 2 of those, Kenwin and Palacios, 10 million Crouch, and other sort of big players have been brought in, for a lot of money. It's not what Man United and Man City and Arsenal and Tottenham spend, but in our peer group, it's a lot of money. And I see where they're coming from, but I also think some of this kicking in as well. It's just the familiarity breeds contempt thing,
I think that's definitely a case, and I for one, speaking personally, I'd take being in the Premiership all day, every day. You know what I mean? Because there's those dark times that we can.
I think where the problem is, Rob, that if we were in the Premier League and we'd done it on Blackpool's budget, or Burnley that came up, I don't think anyone could have a thing to say. We have spent quite a bit, and then see the thing at Stoke, the lack of goals. This is one of the things we did discuss last summer, and we were talking about whether we'd bring Owen in or not. There can't be many clubs where a strike of our size, where a manager brings in a record signing for 8 million. And then replaces him the following season for 10 million. There aren't many chairmen who would indulge you, because to my knowledge, I don't think Kenwin and Crouch have actually started a game together, and it has mainly been Crouch, injury accepted, who's been getting selected. And Kenwyn actually did nothing wrong. So it's an astonishing thing, really. And I think that's where a lot of people's frustrations are coming from. That I think recently we've seen, I think there may have even been something down at Stoke over the last transfer window, just sort of the way Dave Kemp spoke afterwards and Tony Pulis about, I think they may be a little bit irritated about the players they weren't allowed to bring in. I think the Breck Shea and the Jack Butland were perhaps maybe the owners kind of wanted those because there's a resale value there. They're still relatively young players. Yeah. And maybe there's been a change in direction, you know. So the point, again, with those articles getting back to him, is I see all the arguments. I see them, and they're all valid, you know. And they are, I think, most of the time. And people, the thing you should never forget, you know, whether you're staunchly behind the manager or those... I think there's people, the overcritical ones, I do dismiss those. I'm like a judge at diving. You take away the highest and the lowest marks because they can't be trusted, you know. And those roughly in the middle. So within that parameter, I never forget that all these people, they actually, you know, they love Stoke City, and what they say is from a genuine point of view, you know, their opinion, that what they are suggesting is the best for the club. And I never lose sight of that. You know, that's why I'm prepared to listen to anyone who wants to talk about Stoke, whether I agree with them or not. Yeah. I don't ever doubt, you know, except in the truly extreme cases at both ends.
There is extremes,
at both ends. You know,
quite entertaining extremes.
I never doubt that these people, you know, don't want the very best for the club.
No, I think everyone's passionate, and that's, you know, that when you've got an atmosphere like, you know, we can build down Stoke, you can have that sort of environment.
Yeah, of course.
You know, you win a game, everyone's over the moon. Lose a game, everyone's suicidal, sort of thing. Yeah. So it's that sort of, you know, along with that, it becomes, you know, very, I'm not sure the phrase, but in terms of it, just they just see it through, you know, one colour or the other. Do you know what I mean?
I think people entrench themselves into a position as well, and once they're there, they almost can't bring themselves to back down, and partly because the other people will literally give it the adult version of na 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 na. Yeah, you know, it's you know, you're gonna, you know.
What about the middle group? Is there an average group? Which is the biggest group in your opinion?
I think the middle group is probably the biggest group. I think there's a lot more doubters than people suspect. I really do. I know the Oatcake, often people say, how representative is it? Well, I've got about 10,000 members on there out of, you know, it's out of 25,000 Stoke fans who turn up. I mean, you know, Murray will call a general election on 1,000 opinions across the country.
It's a good sample.
It is a good sample. But, of course, what happens is that most people kind of just read it. It's only people who really want to get something off the chest who post. And I think if you look in the newspaper, I'm sure you get your calls here, people ring when they're irritated about something. And on message boards, people post when they're irritated about something.
Or delighted.
Yeah,
that's the
but I think that's less of a motivator.
You only got to look at like TripAdvisor as another prime example of that. You know what I mean? Most people put on when they're unhappy.
Yes.
The odd person will put fantastic, this, that, and the other, and it's exactly the same. It's difficult to use that as a gauge, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because
we just need to break for ads, and then we'll come back after the ads, if that's okay.
Six Towns Radio.
How great is it to get a new job after spending time unemployed? Transport can be expensive though. The problem is, you start your job, but then you have to wait to get paid before you have any money. The Home to Work scheme, funded by the European Regional Development Fund, is here to help you if you live in Stoke-on-Trent. Whether you need bus fare, a bike loan or taxi share, see if Home to Work at Stoke-on-Trent City Council can help you. Call us now on 01782 235 367. That's 01782 235 367.
CompareYourMobile.com is a price comparison website for mobile phones. With over 1 million mobile phone deals updated daily from all the mobile phone retailers, networks and manufacturers. This free service can help you find the latest phones like the iPhone 5, Galaxy 3, BlackBerry 9900 and much, much more. You can get a free phone and also get a free gift, including a new laptop, tablet PC, game console or even a 50-inch TV. CompareYourMobile.com, making it easy to find the best mobile phone deal for you.
If you have missed any of Six Towns Radio's great celebrity or sport interviews, why not visit our YouTube channel, Six Towns Radio. Remember, that's the number 6 and all one word, Six Towns Radio.
Buy a drink in Chills Bar between 12 and 2 p.m. on Port Vale match days and you get a raffle ticket to win a brand new Port Vale football shirt. Every drink you buy at those times, over the value of £2, gets you one ticket for the draw. You must be in the bar at 2 when the raffle takes place or it will be redrawn. For full terms and conditions, ask a member of the Chills Bar team. Chills, Westport Road, Burslem.
Stoke T-shirts, the premier Stoke T-shirt company.
Did you know that we also do customised printing on T-shirts? Band T-shirts, hen and stag party T-shirts, birthdays, events, special occasions, all at an affordable cost. Contact rob@stoketshirts.co.uk or call me on 01782 816 362.
Go to www.stoketshirts.co.uk.
Six Towns Radio.
Okay, the debate continues in the studio, off air. So we'll get them all back on air now, and let's carry on with that. Just talking to Martin about an opinion I've got, to be honest, but it'd probably be unfair to ask it him because but I think in terms of, I've got an opinion where some of these players aren't Tony Pulis signings. I think some of them may be signings by the board, the likes of Tunchai, where they bought into the club. Every Stoke fan saw how good he was against Middlesbrough, and would have been suitably impressed and would have said, "Yeah, we'll use that player." And he, on occasions when he was allowed to show his skills, he performed well. He fantastic goal against Man United. Do you think anything? There is an heavy influence from anywhere else?
I don't know, and that's a nice opinion. That's not sitting on the fence or prevaricating. I don't know. I suspect it's possible, but he who pays the piper calls the tune. Tony Pulis has to run the team. That's his job, and he obviously has an overview to broader aspects of the club. But the running of the club is down to the Coates family. That after Tony Pulis is gone, after all us here are gone, that club still has to go on, and you have to build solid foundations, and they have that responsibility. So I don't doubt that some decisions, well, a lot of decisions are made by the owners with regard to the future, and I don't doubt that could possibly come into under the remit of, would you bring this player in? We feel he could be a good investment for the club.
Yeah.
Somebody with a resale value, because TP, he'll point to his results and what's been achieved at Stoke. He does have a record of signing kind of older, more experienced players that maybe tend to come on a higher salary than younger players that can be blooded in and worked into the team and that may have a resale value. I mean, we spent 10 million on Crouchy. Probably quite lucky to see any decent percentage of that to come back, So, I don't doubt that it's possible, but I wouldn't know that there's any specific cases where it's happened. And I think the relationship, both the Coates family and Tony Pulis are always very keen to point out, that how well they get on. The family certainly talk about how much they, see the team as being under good stewardship in his hands, and they talk about going for meals together. So I doubt whether anything's ever truly been forced on him.
Yeah.
Perhaps maybe he's bitten the bullet and gone, okay, I'll bring him in,
Give him a go.
If it might not have been his first choice, but he understands why it's being done. But again, that's all supposition. I don't know. That's the honest answer.
Okay. Owen and Crouch, I think, you talked about Jones and Crouch earlier. Why would you bring Crouch in when you've already got Jones? Is it for me? That was a marquee sign in terms of actually we can sign this type of player. We can actually bring this player to the club, internationally recognised, and probably looking to develop the club in that manner. And probably Owen, a similar situation, I'm thinking. So it's not just about football here. It's some political stuff, and I think some of Stoke's media commitments. I know. They don't enjoy a lot of media commitments, and probably TP doesn't enjoy, having to go down to London for whatever. And I've got an opinion where, okay, let's farm Michael off and do some of that stuff. I don't know. Again, it's supposition.
That's possible. Yeah.
I don't know. It's very difficult.
Those kind of signings, I do take on board entirely the idea that they could be marquee signings that elevate the status of the club in the eyes of other pros, and go, wow, look what they're doing there. And I think when we signed Crouch, I think it was Martin Samuel in the Daily Mail who put, he was glowing about it. And is this a club like Stoke looking to make a push for a top 4 place? I do worry sometimes that with TP that we talked about the need to push on and evolve, and I wonder sometimes if he doesn't think he isn't mistaking evolving genuinely in your approach to the game with just signing bigger name players and shoehorning them into the same old system.
But you've seen his different style of play, though, haven't you?
Yes, occasionally, but I remember when Gudjon as the manager, and I remember the famous day where fans were chanting 4-4-2 at him as we were losing. I think we were losing against Cambridge at home, and eventually changed it. And then we had a. It actually was at the time. It's all relative to the time you're at. And we actually came roaring back for 2-2. Criminally, we then lost it in injury time, but that had, we were heading to.
Fans going happy then, don't they?
But they got the point. But what Gudjon did then, and he went, okay, here's your 4-4-2 then, and he played it, and we actually started doing really well. Then we had a big game against Walsall, bang, changed it. He went straight back to his safety blanket. Yeah. And I think all managers, and I'm not using this as a stick to beat Tony Pulis, that sometimes he's tried it. I think we went to Man U and Chelsea earlier in the season. We actually played pretty well at both grounds. We lost 4-2 at Man U, where it has to be said our defending was dreadful that day. And it's a shame because in all other aspects we played really well. And our usually rock-solid defence just decided not to mark any Man United players that day. Let's just let them have the ball and hope they miss. I think that seemed to be But at Chelsea, we were desperately unlucky to lose about 4 minutes from the end. And at the time, and I write in the Sentinel every week, I was like, wow, it looks like something's happening here. But then we just seemed to get cold feet. And having played like that at 2 grounds like that, we then go to Villa Park, a club who just can't defend for toffee and don't have a single attempt on goal. And made no effort to either. And the safety blanket thing came out again. It's almost like he knows I've got a definite point here. I can only throw away a point here. And the safety blanket thing comes out. This is a guaranteed point if we just sit back. And I do feel that goes on. So sometimes whenever we see... I don't want to use the phrase, 1 step forward, 2 steps back, because it isn't that. It's sometimes 1 step forward, then take the step back. And we just back where we started, And I do feel that goes on sometimes. And it's almost just afraid to embrace it because there's security in what he knows. He knows that this other thing will get us over the 40-point line. And sometimes I just feel maybe he doubts himself a little bit. But as many managers do, I'm not saying this applies wholly to Tony Pulis. I think a lot of people do that, and we have examples of Stoke managers and possibly other managers doing the exact same thing.
Steve, I think
I got 2 points. One is around the marquee signings, and it goes back about how many of them have been the ones that have come and added some credibility to sort of raise the profile of the club. Ida Good-Johnson came, never figured. Woodgate came, hardly figured. Michael Owen came, hardly figured. I think they're coming for a different reason somehow. And the other thing, at a much lesser level, but managed sides, I completely agree with what Martin says. You've got a fallback position. You've got something that you know and you believe. Yeah. And I'm probably one of the few people in the whole country who still believes that 3 centre backs can work. Yeah. But when I've managed and things haven't been going well, that's what I would go back to, because that's where I played in for a long time and it worked for me then, etc., etc. So you have that position where if he really said, Tony, your job depends on this game, that's what he will revert to.
Well, on theories, Rob, you've used that. I don't think any understand. I've written this in the Oatcake as well, but I don't know how many Stoke fans read it or not. We're in an internet age now, aren't we? Not a written magazine age. We still sell okay, but not to the levels we did pre-internet.
In print.
But I think any understanding of Tony Pulis as a manager, as a person, has to take in the 95-96 season at Gillingham. If you look at that, it's an astonishing set of stats. He won promotion with Gillingham for over a 46-game season, and they barely registered a goal a game. You actually look at it; it's the 1-0s. Yeah, I think at home they scored 33 goals and conceded 6, and away from home, I'm trying not to exaggerate it. I'm not sure they even broke double figures, but they got enough points to get up. And for TP, it's like imprinting on any young animals, even humans. Those first things. It was one of his first seasons as a manager, and this worked. Cast iron defence, grinding out, nick a goal. You look at it, sequences of results. Gillingham in the 95-96 season, 1-0, 0-0, 1-0, 0. And I don't think you can ever truly let that go. It's imprinted in his mind that worked. And I would say probably the exact same of many managers. So in his mind, I always feel that's what he's trying to work to. That's his perfect season. He obviously remembers it very fondly. Yeah. It was a real achievement. And I think, because we always talk about this evolving, yet we actually see the last 2 seasons have been our lowest scoring seasons. And what he's doing, he's trying to tighten up. And we're trying to play we play 4 at the back. And we don't even play an attacking midfield. We play 2 holding midfielders. People go, "Ooh, our midfielders don't score." Yeah, because they're told not to cross the halfway line. That's why you don't see Whelan and
bizarrely, I enjoy that. I love watching that sort of.
Yeah, but that's the reason why we're not scoring.
Yeah, I totally understand that. Totally get that.
You don't see, very rarely see a Stoke midfielder on the edge of the opposing area if it's not off a set piece.
Well, I love an away day where you go and you probably get one chance, score 1-0. You come away and
the only danger. The trouble is though, we're not doing that very often.
No, we're not doing that very often. Those sort of games.
Very hard. You leave yourself when you're
definitely.
If the other team score, you're instantly in trouble.
There's that old adage, really old adage. It's not how, it's how many.
Yeah.
And that's great when the how many is enough and you are getting the right results. The minute it starts to falter, that's when you get the pressure.
Yeah, and how many could, in his eyes, is points.
Yeah.
Sure.
Let's have a listen to Tony Pulis. Dave Lee went down to the training ground on Thursday, I think it was, to the press conference, and asked him these few questions. And he mentions intensity as a new buzzword for Tony, I'm feeling.
Tony, we last spoke before the Man City FA Cup game, and you were talking up the FA Cup and saying you took it very seriously, and you played a very strong side, but 3 days later you had to play Wigan. Do you kind of regret playing such a strong side, not resting a few players?
Well, Wigan obviously rested most of their players in the cup tie against Macclesfield, and then came to us with, I think it was 9 players who hadn't played in that game. You can do it both ways. If we'd have beaten Man City, then I'd have been absolutely delighted with it. And you don't win, but we've always taken that tournament very, very serious. And the last half an hour against Wigan, we did suffer, without a question of a doubt. The lads did look, after what has been a very, very hectic Christmas period, they did look a little bit tired.
I'm also a bit confused by your opinions on the number of games that are played. I mean, we talked about the international talk.
I don't think it's the number of games we play. I think it's the intensity of the games that you play. Yeah. And I think the intensity, especially at the Premier League, it's not just physically, it's mentally as well. That's the difference. I think you could play a game a week if you needed to. But can you play it at the intensity you need to win games? That's the difference. And I think that's what people have got to understand. I hear supporters going, well, they should be able to play every day. Well, it's not just playing the game, it's everything that surrounds the game and the intensity that's involved in it, and especially at the top level and Premier League level.
What does that mean? Like, for example, you'd like the Premier League to be, 22 teams instead of 20 teams or something like this with a few extra games?
No, not at all. I think the concept of the Premier League is fantastic. I just think there's times where the games are so compact in respect of making space for friendly internationals, or making space for something else, whereas it does take a lot out of the players. And like I said, we've lost 7, 8 players this week. We've gone off to international football. Kenwyn, Cameron, and some of the lads have gone as far as Honduras and whatever Kenwyn's played, goodness knows, Costa Rica or whatever. So they've had that intensity the last few weeks, and then instead of having a break this week and being able to settle them down and recover them and get them right again, they've been off travelling.
So that's going to be your major selection problem for the Reading game?
No, not really. We've got a great group of lads who give everything. I think if you look at the game against Arsenal and the effort and commitment, and the stats are fabulous. If you were aware of them, or we showed you, which we're not going to, the performance level against Arsenal was absolutely fantastic. It was back to what it's been before Christmas, and that was a great fill-up for us. We've got 12, 13 games to go now. We've got to get as many points as we possibly can, and we've got to make sure that everybody who plays gives it their best.
Good luck against Reading.
Thank you.
Okay, Dave Lee there talking to Tony Pulis, mentioning intensity, bringing that new topic into the subject. I think he's trying to defend. A lot of people will say, "Oh, they used to play 40 games a season. Da 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 da. Why can't you play every week?" You can't use that excuse now. The European football isn't there. So he's saying it's the level the players are playing at and international travel as well. So I'm thinking that's going to affect team selection today. I think the likes of Jones will sit on the bench, and the likes of Cameron may sit on the bench for this game. Martin, your thoughts on that?
Intensity. I mean, if you talk about the intensity of an individual day for a team like Stoke, well, those are tactics we choose to use. So, we can't hide behind it as an excuse that our players are tired. We'll play differently then. If you set them up that way, you have to prepare for that, and that means having the squad ready. And I think internationals, every team suffers from it. We're no different. Clubs like Fulham send off whole hosts of their players as well. And that's the state of the modern game. Now everybody's sending them off to the Caribbean, to the US, to the African. I don't think we've lost anybody to the African Cup of Nations.
No.
So we count our blessings there. And look at Newcastle and Pardew with his French legion there, foreign legion. So I understand why he's saying it, but we can't hide behind that at all. Because it affects every single club, and again, for the individual match day, the intensity we play at, which is actually one of the things I love. When we start hunting teams down and we won't give them any space. Now I do love to see that when it's in full flow, but that's the way we've chosen to play, and so we have to prepare for that. We can't say the players are tired. Well, then we didn't prepare for the season properly, and I think it's one of them seasons as well. You take away Mark Wilson, I don't think we've been particularly badly affected by injuries at all. I think we've been quite lucky.
One thing that I've said all along in terms of Premiership, we've had odd suspensions and stuff, but injury-wise, there's something down there that they do, and they do really well.
Credit to them if that's the case, because we don't seem to have those long-term nagging injuries. I think going back many years, when we used to go in vans together. It was always, will Carl Saunders make it today? You remember that? It was, no, he's out again. Spider's out again. He's pulled something, I think we've done quite well there. That's the club. All aspects of the management are to be congratulated on that.
So Reading game today.
A few weeks ago we were kind of looking at this as a kind of nice little day out, and I think it's 7 league games without a win now, something like that, and some disappointing performances in there, and just at the exact same time, as it always happens, Reading have really started to pick up and now starting to seriously look as though they could survive this season. Really giving very strong indications. Draw against Chelsea, beat West Brom, beat Sunderland, and some pretty impressive performances in there. Won away at Newcastle. So it's
always late on as well.
Yeah, amazing. So, and that's what we talk about at Stoke. This intensity and stuff. Well, Red, are playing for 90 minutes at the moment, and that's kind of where we went wrong against Wigan, didn't we? We really first 50 minutes that was just so impressive. We looked like we were going to take a bad Wigan team to the cleaners, and then we were punch drunk on the ropes at the end, hanging on for dear life. So I don't know what to make today. I in my heart of hearts, I think we're good enough. I think if we click, if we don't panic, if the manager, doesn't. I think he lost a little bit of his self-confidence against when Wigan scored that first goal. And I think we took off Adam, we took off Nzonzi, both of them, and he just panicked then, or they've pulled one straight back, and I think we undid a lot of things there. And I understand he's damned if he does, damned if he doesn't.
Yeah,
he doesn't change anything. Oh, and the very same people who criticise him for the changes he made will say, just left it as it was. What did he think was going to happen? The people who want to damn you are going to do it anyway. But today, tough game, but I really believe we should be able to do it, and I think we will do it.
Go on, give us a score.
I think 2-0 or 2-1, genuinely.
Okay.
Reading don't seem to have a lot of trouble scoring goals, but I think we need that clean sheet, and I think today, I think we're going to get it. A long time without one. I think we'll get it today.
I'm fancying a 2-0 myself. Steve Norris, this
1-1.
1-1. And Steve Farrell, if you can get him near a microphone,
Yeah,
what's your thoughts?
I've got to say, I fancy Reading today. Their form's
trying to
been
upset
better.
me
Yeah, sorry to.
Here's the score, mate.
2-1 Reading.
2-1, and Damien, who we haven't told you he's here, but he's coming to get involved. He's back from his foreign travels.
Yeah, I'm going to say 3-1 Stoke, but Ian Hart will score a free kick for Reading.
Oh, he's ex-Leeds.
No bias.
To get the Leeds connection in
No bias
somewhere.
at all.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, that's all things Stoke City. Martin, I really appreciate you coming in.
Anytime, Rob.
I'd like to get you more involved, to be honest, but we'll have that discussion after this. Let's go to the ads and we'll take it from there.
Six Towns Radio.